Like you think Egypt is good. Once you go to when you go to Peru, you're going to see stonework there that just, I mean, dude, it just completely, other than one or maybe two temples in Egypt, just completely outclasses. There's just you could click anywhere. There's all different kinds of stonework. So that one right there, that's the 12-angled stone. That's the 12-angled stone at the Palace of Inca Roca, and it's just amazing. So they call it granite, but it's actually gray andesite, and it's just the precision with which these things are cut or they're shaped is just, it's really amazing. And seeing it in person is quite it's just quite mind blowing.
I mean, it's remarkable. Like, how big are these stones specifically? Like the cuts of these.
This stone is probably a similar size to this table.
Wow.
Yeah. Probably the face of it. Now, I would say it goes in maybe 2 feet or so. So it's about the size of this table, and it's about 2 feet thick. And then all of the stones are just perfectly aligned to every stone around them. And there's not one stone in all of the Inca world that is, there's no two stones that are identical.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all shaped to fit alongside the stones around them. And it's just amazing, man. I mean, so when I guess the place where the mystery comes from with these is it's kind of like if you go to the Inca realm or if you go to Egypt, there's the debate whether did the Inca really do this or did this happen a long time ago, or thousands of years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Did the Egyptians really do this, or did this happen thousands of years?
A pre-kingdom empire.
Was there a prehistoric civilization that did this? The way the wedge that initially starts that conversation, at least in Peru, was you had Spaniards who were there early on, and most Spaniards were just invested in conquering these native kingdoms and plundering them for all their gold and everything. And then there were some people, like there were friars and priests and stuff, that actually cared about the natives and wanted to convert them to Christianity. And then you had some people who, maybe like me and you and I don't really, having a bunch of gold would be cool, but I'm not really in the place in society where I can take advantage of that. I'm also not like a priest either. I'm not baptizing people, but I can see the significance of these people, and we should know more about this, like just a general interest in that, in the history and the anthropology. There were people there that had those interests. So one of them is the son of an Inca princess and a Spanish, I forget, was he a captain or he was a general? Anyways, his name was I want to say Gaspar de Carvajal, but it's not him. It's Garcilaso de la Vega, and so he's the son of an Inca princess, and he essentially writes this account of his childhood up until the point he was like 18 or 19, or maybe he was 21, that he grew up in the city of Cusco. And dude, it's a book that's like this thick, this big. It's a huge book. And it's called The Royal Commentaries of the Incas. And it's essentially him talking about his childhood. And there's all these strange things that he talks about. And when he talks about the stonework up at Sacsayhuaman, he says that the Indians that were there, and I'm using the term Indians because that's what he says. He says the Indians that were there would speak of that the gods, or that a race before, like a earlier people, had placed these stones here, that the stones had always been there. And then they speak about underneath Sacsayhuaman, he remembers going into a place that was called the Chinkanas, which was this huge tunnel system that would go underneath Sacsayhuaman. So you have Cusco here, and up on top of this hillside is this fortress of Sacsayhuaman. And so they're both in Cusco, but he talks about how there were these tunnels that you could enter in up at Sacsayhuaman and go underneath the city of Cusco, and then from there, these tunnels would go out into the Andes. So like under the ground for thousands of miles. Or hundreds of miles at least must have been. He talks about that. There's so much more that he talks about and that other Spaniards talk about, and that people in, I would say, so that book came out in 1609. There's another account written by like an anonymous, we don't know who the author was, but it's a Jesuit chronicler from the year 1600. And then there's Cieza de Leon, I think in the 1650s, he writes his account of Cusco. And there's several others, but they just give you these glimpses into things that were going on in Cusco. And like, it'll just be one sentence. He'll say, the Indians say that the stones had always been there, or something akin to that. And there'll be multiple instances. And then they just move on, and it's like they almost don't even realize that they just wrote down like this huge mystery.
Right.
And so by the 1800s, over 200 years later, people go back and read this and they're like, wait, this is weird, right? And so from the 1800s, well, people have been looking for the Chinkanas, this tunnel system, since the 1800s, but there's all kinds of other things that people are looking for almost 200 years now that are highlighted or at least spurred on to us from the Spanish chroniclers that tell us that there's something more here than just like, oh, the Inca made this, right?
That's interesting.
So that's where this whole mystery starts. That's why people are interested in Peru.
I've heard similar things about the Egyptians, that like sometimes the New Kingdom Egyptians will talk about, Giza or any of the other pyramids, and they'll say, oh yeah, this came from the people before us, or something to that effect. And it's like, oh, are they referencing Old Kingdom Egyptians, which is, 1,000 years before or whatever? Or sure. Is it from the proto-society that, was before them? But it's a similar kind of phrasing where like these stones have always been here. Like these stones are from the people that were before us, which you can imagine if you are Incan, which this guy, ethnically, obviously was mixed, like Spanish and Incan, but I would imagine that they would have some type of reverence for their people, and they would say like, no, we did this. So I'm curious where that comes from, right? Like, is it almost more respectful to your culture if you say like, oh, this came from before us, or is it an actual historical account that, oh no, this was already here and no one really knows how it happened,
Yeah. So this is something that's happening right now with the Chinkanas. So there's multiple teams in Cusco that are looking for these tunnels. And in fact, I'm the face of the English-speaking campaign, like the crowdfunding to do this. We just launched it last week, and then I'm working on a video for the Cusco's Ministry of Culture right now, like a crowdfunding video. But it's highly debated over who actually discovered them or who is supposed to be able to get the credit, because the team that I'm working with is the team that's actually licensed by the Ministry of Culture to be carrying out these excavations. There's another team that's not licensed to be able to do this. And the reason that the feud happens is because the team that's not licensed, or they don't have the permits or whatever to be able to dig for the tunnels and scan for them. It's a very complicated subject. I don't know all the details of it, but apparently it's because their motives, the team that doesn't have the permit, is they believe that it was a lost civilization, a pre-Inca, maybe pre-Peruvian native culture, right? And then so the Ministry of Culture in Peru is like, no, your whole objective here completely insults our ancestral heritage. Like, why would we give you this permit to be able to do this when you don't even think that we did, like the indigenous people did this, right? And it's kind of like where that comes from is it's a backlash for the complete annihilation of the native world, right, during the colonial period. So now you have people there that are completely 100% full-blooded Inca, still speaking Quechua, the language, and they're tired of, and there's a lot of white people that work on this other team that wants the permits. So they come in looking for something, and they're saying, yeah, we want to come into Cusco and dig here, but we don't think that the Inca are responsible for this. And the Inca are like, excuse me, What? So it's kind of like you have a lot of this race, cultural
politics getting in the way of actual good archaeology and good history.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, as someone who, I know a lot about ancient Egypt. It's like my, I don't know, like a passion of mine, right? But I'm educated in, and I would say my specialty is the pre-Columbian world, like, studying Native Americans. And in the time I've spent studying it, I've learned to kind of sympathize with that. Like, I first would sort of roll my eyes at like, they're not trying to erase you. They just don't think that you did this, whatever. And so I'd spend more time learning about, the colonial world and everything. And I realized like, okay, this actually is a real argument. Like, looking for something that, looking to find this answer to this ancient mystery, and then not even being open to giving credit to the ancestors of the native people who live there, is bizarre. Like,
Right.
and the more I get into it, the more I'm like, that kind of is a colonial mindset. Like, okay, I get it now. And but it took years of me being in it for it to sort of set in. But then you have the backlash of like, people say that way of thinking is like too woke, whatever. It's like, well, man, history is really, really complicated, really nuanced.
I've heard it said that history is a different country. You know what I mean? That like if you try to ascribe like your modern day morals onto it, it's like, dude, it's a different world. It fundamentally, like ethically, was completely different. And by trying to politicize it and then letting that get in the way of the work you're doing, seems like it would be fraught with issues. And that's why I like the way you're approaching it. Is like, no, let's just actually figure out where these things are, what they were used for, and from that we can deduce like who created them, right? It's kind of, this is the way that I would describe what I think is happening. Is I think it's possible that the Inca are not responsible for everything that's in Cusco or at Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu. There's a lot of amazing stonework there, and there are Spanish chroniclers that talk about the Inca giving credit for the stonework to some precursor people, right? They say that the stones were always there. There's even mound sites. I think this is a great example. In the eastern United States, there are giant mounds that are out here on the East Coast. Is this like the Serpent Mound?
Serpent Mound plus a million others. Mm-hmm. Maybe a million, literally a million others. And there are European explorers going through North America. This is very I never see podcast people talking about North America. But there are European explorers going through that learn to communicate with the natives, and they say, who built these mounds? And the natives go, the gods made them. The mounds were always here. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that it was... Yes, it does mean it was entirely different civilization, but archaeology has showed us when we excavate it all that the people who made those are the ancestors of these people 5,000 to 9,000 years ago, right? Wow. So not the same civilization, a completely different people, but ethnically they are connected to each other.
Right.
And so what I think is happening in Peru and what I think is happening in Egypt is it's the Egyptians calling back on ancient Egyptian world and hearkening back to it. So it was always the Egyptians that did it. It wasn't like a precursor people that are of a completely different race. And for the Peruvians, for the Inca, when the Inca are saying, the gods built these were always here. Well, they're probably hearkening back to an even more ancient Peruvian civilization, right? That's what I think is actually happening there. So it's really a mix of both.
That's fascinating. I guess, that's actually a great distinction, that the Inca is almost a nationality, right? Like that's like a federalized version of the people that are there, and they built an empire. But then there's an ethnic heritage of whatever you want to call that. It's just the people of the land, right?
And the Inca are latecomers. They're
all right, this is 800
Yeah,
AD.
this is 800.
There were people there for however many thousands of years before that.
The earliest evidence that the earliest evidence that is recorded, that they found archaeological evidence for, but here's the problem, is that it would be like trying to get the permit to do huge excavations in New York City to try to find the most ancient evidence of habitation. You know how hard that would be to do that here? How much of the infrastructure you'd have to dig up.
It's impossible.
So they found a little bit of evidence of people as far back as 2,000 or 3,000 BC in Cusco. So people have been living there for a long time because it's a very advantageous place to live. People identified it thousands of years ago that it's a great place, and people have just always lived there. But those very first people were not Inca, right? The civilization of Cusco did not exist. It's just it's the prehistoric precursors to what will eventually become later on.